So another myth would be that men and women should practice fasting the same way. And that's not true because, and we should also classify women in different parts of their life practicing in different ways as well. Like a menstruating woman should practice fasting differently than a woman who's postmenopausal. And then a man should practice it differently than a woman because of different hormone fluctuations. We have the same hormones, but we have different fluctuations in those hormones. So men have this 24-hour recycling pattern of hormones, kind of like the sun. Sun comes out, it sets, it rises, it sets, 24-hour pattern. We kind of have a similar pattern with some of our sex hormones and et cetera. So cycling women have this 28-day pattern where it's more like the moon that comes out after 28 days. So they have to do it a little bit different. So week by week, that would be a little bit different fasting schedule for a menstruating women. For example, the week before the period would be a week where probably that menstruating woman does not want to practice too much fasting because they want to build progesterone, have a healthy monthly cycle. The period starts, and then that's a good week for the fast to occur and do more aggressive fasting. So there's a big myth that men and women should do it the same, and that's not true. And in fasting, unfortunately, it's good and bad. It's become very popular, and that's a good thing. People are becoming aware to it because it's not new, it's just nuanced. But with that being so popular, people are saying women should not fast because it wrecks their hormones. And that's like saying women should not exercise because it wrecks their hormones. They're saying fasting is a stress, so it's not good for you, especially women. It's the same thing as saying they shouldn't exercise because exercise is a stress. And you know this, David. It's about staying in that hormetic zone. Stress is very important. You mentioned being harder to kill. Our ancestors, we want to be harder to kill. And stress is how you do that. Your body needs to adapt to that stress. But that's the thing. It needs to adapt. So stress is only bad when your body doesn't adapt. But when it does adapt, you get stronger, you get healthier, you live longer, you feel better. So I kind of threw in a few myths there, but that's the next myth that I would want to cover.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I mean, it's kind of like the principle of overload in fitness. So if you don't train, your muscles atrophy, or if you train too light, your muscles will atrophy, or you won't get the benefits, where you actually have to challenge your muscles in a certain way where you are challenging them at their peak. In a sense, overloading the amount of resistance that they can put out in order to then adapt, right? As long as you have enough nutrients and rest to then get stronger. It's kind of the same with fasting where, you have to practice it, and you've got to, in a sense, challenge your metabolic system in a healthy way to just kind of gradually bump it or give it a nudge, give your metabolic system a nudge. And then, of course, rest, recover, provide the proper nutrients. So that way you can recover and get stronger through the stress, like you were talking about. So that's so important. Any other big myths that you're seeing with fasting?
Yeah, a lot of people say, the benefits from fasting come from being in a caloric deficit. That might be one benefit, but there is a big difference between fasting and a calorie deficit or cutting calories, because with simply just cutting calories, for example, let's say somebody is cutting calories, but they're eating throughout the day. They're not getting that digestive reset, even though their calories are cut, versus somebody who may cut their calories to the same amount, but with fasting, they do get that digestive reset. So there's a difference there with what it does for the gut. But I don't like to focus on calories because I think calories are more of a distraction. I think the body is much more sophisticated and complex than just calories in versus calories out. I do think calories matter, but I don't think they're high on the priority list. I think they're more of a distraction than anything else. And I had to do a whole 180 with that because in the beginning, I used to teach all about the science of fat loss and teach people how to calculate their total daily energy expenditure and be in a deficit. And the problem with it is many problems, but one of the main problems is that it works short term. And the person thinks, okay, this is working. Cutting calories does work. Ben's a liar. David's a liar. But over time, what's going to happen? The metabolism needs to adapt to the energy deficit. And then the metabolism slows and lowers. And then you got to cut your calories more. And you can only cut your calories so much. So with fasting, it's not necessarily about eating less. It's about eating less often. You could still be in a calorie deficit, but the cool thing about doing it with fasting is that you have the counter-regulatory hormones that preserve your metabolism and prevent your metabolism from going into this starvation mode. Granted, with excessive fasting, not good, but with the right amount of fasting, you talked about that, and adapting to it and then getting the nutrients and enough protein during your eating window, you won't have that issue. The body is very, very smart. And there are studies that show the metabolism actually revs up during a fast, not decreases. And that's because of these counter-regulatory hormones.
Yeah, that's good. And what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see people making as they start to practice intermittent fasting?
One of the biggest mistakes is that they think that they don't look at fasting as a muscle. And I do look at it as muscle. You mentioned that as well. So, for example, if somebody was a couch potato for 10 years and they hear about the amazing benefits of CrossFit or these like Barry's Boot Camp, whatever it is, and they go and they do a full on 60-minute workout that first day, they are going to hurt themselves. They're going to be sore for a week. They're going to feel awful. Similar with fasting. If you've been a sugar burner eating every 2 to 3 hours for years and you go and you hear about the benefits of a 24-hour fast and you say, tomorrow is my day, I'm going to do a 24-hour fast. It's going to look ugly and feel awful because it's a muscle you haven't developed yet. So it's a big mistake to dive right into fasting. You want to build up that fasting muscle. One of the best ways to do that, and I know you teach the same thing, is to get fat adapted. Teach your body to burn fat instead of sugar. You can do that in 7 to 14 days. Do some variation of keto, a low carb, high fat. Get your body familiar with burning fat instead of sugar. Then you start pairing that with the fasting schedule and you start building up that window with fasting. You start extending that window and you're going to notice you're going to get the results that you're seeking because you didn't go right into it and shock the body essentially. So that's a big mistake. People just do too much too soon.